What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and another episode. This one is just a straight YouTube podcast. Still trying to come up with a solid name. So if you have a good one, comment it below, and we'll take suggestions on that. But this week we've got Justin Arth. He's a professional quarterback. I can say with some certainty he has been paid money to play football. So I think that translates to being a professional quarterback, looking at some XFL teams, trying to get signed somewhere big. And I've known Justin since college. And you can follow Justin on Instagram and TikTok at jarthqb11, and then on Twitter at JustinArthQB. He's also got a YouTube. All of that will be in the description. But Justin, how you been, man? What have you been up to the last couple of weeks?
Oh, hey, it's good to be back on the channel, guys. I mean, all the live streams, long time coming, so it's good to be back on the channel. But no, I mean, got a lot of stuff going on with the XFL draft earlier this week. Fingers crossed, trying to get drafted there. Haven't been drafted to this point yet, but things are coming together pretty close. A lot of guys, NFL level guys, are being taken right now, so we're looking at the supplemental draft in December. But if not, I'm going out to play in Wyoming for one more arena football season and then hopefully out of arena for good. But no, I mean, just kind of been training with my Tom House, the great throwing guru, Tom House, former Rangers coach, current Tom Brady throwing coach, former Drew Brees throwing coach, and many other guys, whether it's baseball like Randy Johnson or Nolan Ryan or God knows there's so many
that he's at this point.
And got to spend this weekend in Orlando training with him and John Rocker, who's very, very I'll just say he's a character, to put it at that. But no, good to be around those guys. Good to coach some quarterbacks, get some work in myself, and coach some pitchers, see some Major League Baseball scouts, and continue building relationships with guys in MLB farm systems and supporting their career, even if one happens to be a New York Met, as they start in Double-A and should be in the majors by September next year.
So here's hoping. Are you allowed to name drop? What's the biggest name athlete you've trained with at one of these camps?
In person, Sam Ellinger. But in terms of like baseball players, we've had the closer that's out for the season now with the Washington Nationals. Why am I forgetting his name right now? And you'll say the name now when you're looking it up, and I'm gonna be like, all right, this is exactly who it is. But he was there. He worked out with us once and told Tom, "Peace, get out of here." But no, Sam Ellinger from the NFL side.
Tanner Rainey.
Yeah, Tanner Rainey. Yeah. But no, so Tanner Rainey. But one good close friend of mine now is Daniel Camarena, or Danny Slamarena, the last pitcher to ever hit a grand slam in baseball history. He's a good friend of mine now. Still with the Padres, coming back from Tommy John surgery, so I think he should be in either the competing for a rotation spot in spring training, or at least a bullpen guy for him next year. And I mean, Justin Courtney, who's with the Mets organization. So there's been a lot of guys. I mean, you never really know who's going to be at camps. I mean, John Rocker was at this past camp too. He's one of our coaches now in the system, and we've got a lot of minor league baseball players. So there's a couple guys, certain free agent that we may be talking about today that I can't name drop because Tom signed an NDA with them. So I might have some information on where a certain New York Met might be going, but the NDA agreement, so can't say too much.
Okay. Very excited to know where Brandon Nimmo is going, but I gotta think that's probably not the guy, just based on your facial expression there.
I'm just gonna say that the NDA person we're talking about is gonna be making a whole lot more money than Brandon Nimmo. No slight to Brandon Nimmo.
Okay. Oh, that might give it. There might be. That's a pretty big hint, I think.
Well, hey, I can give hints all I want as long as I don't say the name.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, Justin, obviously a big football guy, as that's what he plays, but I think it's safe to say he's a pretty big baseball fan as well. He's a big Atlanta Braves fan. If you guys haven't been around the channel, that's his favorite team. They won a World Series, 2 years ago at this point? 2 World Series ago? So like a year and...
It's maybe 13 months now since they hoisted the the trophy. So, I mean, it feels like it was just yesterday, but got to retool and hashtag resign Dansby Swanson and do it all again next year. Fingers crossed.
So Justin's a big baseball fan. Obviously, I am as well. Most of the stuff, not now, but originally I was an MLB The Show channel, which is not entirely true, but that's probably where most of y'all know me from. But we're going to talk some baseball today, maybe some football a little bit later. Yeah, and let's get into it. So the awards for the league, for the MLB, the Writers Awards, is that what they're called? Were
Yeah.
announced today. So we got MVP, Cy Young, and Rookie of the Year, Manager of the Year have been announced in the previous days. Yeah, and let's just tear through these real quick, and then we'll move on to some free agency stuff. I guess we'll start with the biggies first. Let's talk about the MVPs. Yeah, we'll talk about the AL MVP first because I guess that's the most interesting. Who would you have voted for? Would you have gone Judge or Ohtani?
See, I actually was able to see Shohei Ohtani in person, pitch and hit in a rain delayed Minnesota Twins game when I was out in Minnesota late in September.
Okay.
So I actually have now seen Ohtani in person, which is great. But I will say I would have voted for Judge. I know it's the home run chase that he had to then go hit 62 home runs, which didn't break the record, or did no, he did break the record, or
It
the
broke
American
the
League
AL
record.
record, I
We'll
think.
say. I would have voted Judge. I mean, he racked up 391 total bases and 133 runs scored. So I mean, that's a pretty solid percentage of runs scored and total bases that he's racking up. But obviously, that's just more of a team statistic because he's able to get on base and the team brings him around. But when you
Yeah.
hit 62 home runs, I mean, that's a lot of the big portion of that 391 total bases. But 131 RBIs, 111, or a 101 OPS, and I mean the dude was outstanding all year. I don't think, to my knowledge, that there was any time that Aaron Judge was really extremely cold.
No.
But like I said with Ohtani, it was all right. There was times that he pitched well, and he wasn't hitting well, and then vice versa, where he was solid hitter and then couldn't seem to pitch worth anything. I mean, seeing him pitch against the Twins in person, that was not a fun sight to see. I mean, he got shelled early on and somehow still had a no hitter going on. So it was a very weird game. But no, I would have been Judge.
It's the AL one is so interesting to me because both of them like are doing things that really have never been done before. Like Judge put up an insane amount of home runs that in the AL just hasn't been done, and then Ohtani is pitching at a level that's been done before and hitting at a level that's been done before, but it's never happened from the same guy at the same time. And I feel like any other year, Ohtani's probably winning the MVP, but Judge just had such a nuts season.
Yeah, I mean, I can even put it in this situation too. Like when I was demoted from starting to scout team at Texas Wesleyan and things like that, I started getting scout team player of the week awards every single week, and at some point they started giving it to receivers. And I was like, okay, they're giving me the award, but vicariously through the receiver. So
Yeah.
Shohei won it last year, I believe, and he's always going to be in the conversation because he's one of the generational talents in baseball. But because of what he can do pitching and hitting, and he's very good at both, I don't see a way where you give Shohei the award 2 years in a row, and this could be a more of it's 2022, have to be fair, and Judge hit 62 home runs, so let's give it to Judge, and Ohtani may do it again next year, and it's every other year Ohtani gets the award.
I think both of them put up such special seasons. I think Otani's got a shot to do it again. I don't think Judge is ever going to hit 62 again. But now that I've said
Oh,
that, he's for sure hitting like 65 next year.
we'll
So
see if he goes where I think he's going to go. I don't think he hits 62.
I would I would generally agree with that statement unless he goes to Colorado for some godforsaken reason.
I don't think he's joining Chris Bryant. I'll say that.
Yeah, I don't either, but that's the only place I could see like 70. Maybe at the end of his career for the memes. Could be kind of
Well,
sick.
could be the Yankees out west.
Yeah. You never know. You never know. Paul Goldschmidt won in the NL. I feel like that's not a huge shocker. He had a pretty crazy year. It is, I mean, as good a year as he's ever had, and there really wasn't a whole lot of competition even in his same general area. I think the other two finalists were teammate Arenado and Machado, so not
Yeah,
a
no, I
super
mean,
shocker there.
he had better stat line than Arenado, so obviously he beat out the teammate. Even though Arenado had a pretty good season himself,
Oh yeah,
but I don't know. I kind of go back and forth because, yes, Paul Goldschmidt is probably the best first baseman in baseball. Maybe Freddie's still pushing him. Braves bias here, even though he's a Dodger now. But you look at Machado, and I think that Machado really kind of pushed him for it. But at the end of the day, Goldschmidt's numbers are too good to pass up and give it to Goldie.
yeah. I and this is not a knock on the Arenado season or the Machado season. It's just Goldie had a nuts year. Is
Yeah.
really what it comes down to. Yeah. So Cy Young was Justin Verlander and Sandy Alcantara, who I believe for the first time ever, we had an AL and an NL Cy Young win unanimously. So that's pretty special. It would have been shocking to me if Alcantara didn't win the NL Cy Young, just because of the innings he was putting out. It felt like every 5 days I was seeing on Twitter he threw 8 innings or a complete game, 1 run.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm looking at this stat here, and he had 228 and two-thirds innings, and of those, twirling 6 complete games, which was more than any other team this season.
Yeah,
Not just pitcher. So the thing is, I mean, Alcantara really does deserve the award. I mean, I think Max Fried was pitching of the level of Alcantara, but he turned out the innings and had the performances of 6 complete games. I mean, you can't give the award to anybody else.
yeah, it's like yeah, I would agree. Freed is in that like same level of like stats. If you took away the counting stats, like the ERA and the WHIP and all that are there, right? But man, like 6 complete games in 2022 is an unbelievable number.
Let alone you're pitching for the Miami Marlins that still lost close to 100 games.
Yeah, so it's
Like
like, man,
it was win day whenever Alcantara stepped out on the mound, and then every other day was a losing day. It seemed like.
yeah, it basically what, and I think that's some of the mentality he took to the mound was like, man, I I got to throw eight. There's no shot. If this goes to the bullpen, it's done.
I've got to throw 8 and give up no more than 1 run because my team's probably only going to get me 2. Garrett Cooper might hit a 2-run homer. That's it.
Then you're done. You're done. I think switching to the AL, I think of everybody on the MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year list, the most impressive one to me is Verlander, mainly because of his age, and then also coming back from Tommy John surgery pretty recently, especially on a contract year. That just is super impressive to me what he did this year.
No, what he was able to do this year, I think, jacked up his AAV for whatever contract he gets next, whether it's with Houston or somebody else. I mean, I think he's pushed himself up into the DeGrom territory of the 45, 50 million, just based on that alone. Now, do I think he gets 6-year deal? No. I mean, the age thinks, I saw something today saying he wants a 3-year deal around 165. So that's around the same AAV of a 50 million or maybe 55 million if we're looking at that. But no, I mean, the first time in MLB history that 2 pitchers have unanimously been named the Cy Young. I think both performances are pretty special. I mean, he's the 11th pitcher to win 3 or more Cy Youngs and the 5th oldest pitcher to take home the hardware. And I think Nolan's the oldest to ever bring one home, or maybe Nolan never won a Cy Young.
I don't think
think
Nolan
that
ever did.
yeah. Houston couldn't have asked for anything more.
No.
And I kind of got a little bit of behind the scenes. We've had a Houston Astros pitcher that doesn't train with us. He just moved to Atlanta and had been coming out and saw us working out and was like, hey, let's work too. And he actually apparently works with the same trainer that did Verlander's rehab, and heard a little bit about that. And it wasn't a very easy rehab for Verlander because of the age. But for him to come back and do what he did, that's pretty outstanding stuff.
Really is. Really is quite impressive to me. We'll move on to rookie of the year. We got Julio Rodriguez of the Seattle Mariners, and then Michael Harris from your Atlanta Braves. I'll let you go on Michael Harris first because it feels like you want to.
Yeah. So I will say, I think the National League Rookie of the Year, the real National League Rookie of the Year, was Rob. No, I'm kidding. No, Michael Harris was. In reality, I wasn't going to be mad because I knew it was going to be either Spencer Strider or Michael Harris.
Yeah.
But no, I mean Michael Harris is a great pick. I mean, 4.4 offensive B WAR and a 1.3 defensive B WAR. And he only made his debut in May 28th. I mean, he was outstanding to watch in person. Saw some of those great catches, whether it was on Bally Sports Southeast or being there in person. And for me, I'm a little more biased towards liking him even more because I played against him in high school baseball.
Did you
Because he's
actually?
from the same area that I'm at. He went to Stockbridge High School. I went to Dutchtown. So we're probably 5 minutes apart, same county. So he's a real hometown kid to me, similar to Jason Hayward, because Jason was down here in this area too. But no, I mean Michael Harris was outstanding. The 328 batting average or whatever it was in 2022, I mean, was outstanding for him. And pitchers finally starting to figure out how to pitch to him, and he still was unbeatable. Now, I do think Spencer Strider and what he brought to the team the month before Michael Harris, I mean, I think was outstanding too. But I think what kind of hurt his chance was the fact that he was injured and the post. And I know we're not supposed to take postseason into it, but he ended the year on the IL, came back, and then was shelled in his playoff appearance. Hopefully that's not a sign moving forward because I think this Braves lineup, if you compete for the fifth spot, it's a really good rotation. I mean, lineup should be good too, but rotation should be one of the best in baseball if the guys pan out the way they should. But no, I mean, you weren't going wrong with National League Rookie of the Year. Both rookies came in and really pushed Atlanta from the middling start that they had, similar to the World Series year, to the 101 win division winning wink wink NL East team that I think will continue to be a strong force, hopefully more division wins, but strong force for the next decade. Plus he made $72 million just by doing that.
I think the NL East is going to be very fun for the next decade or so, with the Phillies being good, the Marlins figure to start being good here at some point. The Nationals are going to lose 100 games for the rest of time.
That's the thing. I don't think the Marlins will ever be good. I think it's just going to be Sandy Alcantara and then everybody else. And because this division's too good, and they're probably going to win maybe 70 games a year and be an upset team. But I mean, they're still going to be a good team. I just don't think they ever make the playoffs because of how hard this division is.
I think that's probably true. I could see them getting to like 85, 86 wins here in like 2 or 3 years. And then at that point, you're maybe looking at, well, maybe some of the Mets guys are falling off, or maybe the Phillies have started to fall off, or the Braves, Like at some point, the top 3 have got to fall. And then maybe the Marlins slide into that third spot. But even the Braves falling off are probably better than a strong Marlins team right now. So
of course,
that is the unfortunate situation the Marlins are in. But, at least you have Sandy Alcantara for the next while, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to check Spot Rack, but I think he's got another 3 or 4 years of team control.
Yeah, which is always good. And then the American League Rookie of the Year, Julio Rodriguez, which pains me because I have to see him for the next decade as a Rangers fan. And he is that dude. In my opinion, he was the only choice for the AL Rookie of the Year. I mean, Stephen Kwan was quite good, obviously, but he was not at Julio Rodriguez level, both in numbers and just excitement. Like you're turning on the game to watch this guy play. I think Julio Rodriguez is one of those guys that moves the needle now, and he figures to move the needle even as his career progresses. I don't know if you feel the same way. You probably see him a lot less than I do, but
yeah, I see him a lot less than you do, but I will say the times that I've seen him, whether it was the Home Run Derby or All-Star Game or whatever he's been in that I've been able to see him play in, he's been someone who's very exciting to watch and kind of reminds me of Acuna when he made his debut with the Braves. So Julio Rodriguez, I'd go and hot take say that he's going to be the next Mac Trout of baseball very soon. Um, and the fact that he joins Mike Trout, given the comparison, as the only NL or AL player to have 25 home runs, 25 stolen bases, and an 800 OPS in their rookie season. That's pretty elite territory to be in. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
with the big contract handed out to him, it's can you continue to do this long term when pitchers start to figure out? But I think Julio Rodriguez and the makeup that he's got, and the moxie and the swag that he carries to the ballpark every day is enough to be someone that is one of MLB's best. And Seattle was good in giving him the extension when they did, similar to how I think Atlanta is going to be better off for giving Michael Harris that deal too.
I'd agree. I think the early contracts, sometimes it doesn't quite pan out, and you're like, crap, now we're paying this guy, $10 million for the next 8 years or whatever it is. But then if you wait, you're like, well, now we got to pay him 30 million for the next like 7.
Exactly.
And so it's a risk worth taking when you feel like you have a special talent, as Julio Rodriguez is, as Michael Harris is, obviously. Uh, yeah, those are the big awards that I wanted to talk about. Is there anybody else you wanted to talk about here?
I mean, the only other thing I might would bring up is the controversial topic, in my opinion, of the National League Manager of the Year. Uh,
All right, let's
be-
talk about it.
yeah, I mean, obviously, I know why Buck Showalter got it. I mean, the only thing coming from a Braves fan perspective is the team was number one in payroll in baseball, so they were going to make a jump anyway.
Yeah,
And then you look at the last month of the season and how the New York Mets, even though they did it a lot later than I expected to, the New York Mets metted and lost the division towards the end of the year.
yeah.
So obviously Braves bias here in saying that I think you look at Snitker and what he did again, and how I think that's a little more deserving over the Dave Roberts of a team that's going to be amazing in the regular season, win 118 games, and then lose first round of the playoffs or in the NLCS.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand the Buck Showalter turnaround team was second or third place in division last year, and now they're second place, 101 wins. But I think what the Braves were able to do with the help of the Michael Harrises and Spencer Striders of the world. I mean, I think that deserves at least a little bit of recognition again, because Braves have made a normal occurrence of, hey, let's start under 500 for the first 2 months of the year and then rattle off like 60 wins in the second half of the year to win the division. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the only other thing, but I will put my Braves bias aside and say he's still deserving of it because, I mean, Snitker got it last year. But I do think there doesn't need to be Brian Snitker slander here because I think what he did still deserves credit.
I will actually agree with you, but I'm going to say a different guy should have won it. I think it should have been Rob Thompson for keeping that team even competitive with the stuff he had to pull through. I mean, he had 8 designated hitters
That
on the
is
field
true.
at any given time. He turned Nick Castellanos into a defensive wizard in the playoffs, unfortunately for your Braves, and at times, unfortunately for
I
Houston.
think he drafted.
Yeah, I was like, what is happening? Like, Roberto Clemente transferred all of his powers to him for 4 plays. Kyle Schwarber as a leadoff hitter is odd. It's a managerial decision, but it seemed to work for him. Didn't have his big bopper and Bryce Harper for a lot of the year. I mean, just the stuff Thompson had to pull through to get the Phillies even into the playoffs, to me, is impressive. I think that's the guy that should have won.
Oh,
If I was voting, that's the one I would have voted for probably. But
to be honest with you, I completely forgot about him. So I will say I think that is deserving. Because
yeah,
yeah, I thought the Phillies were out of it, and yeah, I think they were helped by the Brewers kind of tanking towards the end of the year,
oh, for
and I
sure.
still
No,
don't even
not a
know
doubt
what
in the
their
world.
yeah, no, I don't know what their GM did at the trade deadline. I
That's it.
if
We
I ever
didn't
get
know
back,
when we recorded that video, and we still don't know now. So
yeah, I'm just saying, if I ever get back into making sports gaming content over on the Dynasty Sports channel, the Milwaukee Brewers are probably the choice because I'm going to blow the team up and they have nice uniforms.
Yep, that's all you're looking for. So you just need good thumbnails, and that's it. That's all you need for a good franchise rebuild. And let's transition from that into free agency and kind of off-season trade stuff. I figured the way to go here is just kind of cycle through by position and just talk about the top 2 or 3 guys. I've got a list pulled up next to me. I'm sure Justin does as well. And we're not going to start in order. We're going to start. I almost said shart. We're not going to do that. We're going to start with shortstop because I feel like that's the one we can talk about the most, and then we'll come through with the rest of the positions after that. But at the shortstop position, we're looking at Trey Turner, Correa, Bogarts, Dansby Swanson as kind of the top 4. Man, I'll let you take a stab first. Who do you think's going first? How much do you think they're getting?
We'll see. I mean, I look over here on Spot Rack and like the market value for Correa is 31.7. Trey Turner is 33.6. Bogart's 29.5. And then Dansby's on this list somewhere. I think he's around 24.
Yeah.
The thing is, I love Spot Rack's projections of market value. But you look at guys like Trey Turner. I know the Dodgers, I think, would be wrong in not offering him and joining a bidding war to bring him back. But there's going to be a bidding war, I think, for guys like Trey Turner and even Xander Bogaerts. And I think there's going to be a bidding war in reality just for all 4 of these shortstops. I just look at the shortstop class and say, okay, Bogaerts is probably going to get paid over the market value. Trey Turner's definitely getting paid over his market value. Dansby, I think, could get paid over market value if the teams that I think are going to make a run at him just want him out of Atlanta. But fingers crossed, Alex Anthopoulos offers something better than his $100 million deal that he offered to bring Dansby back. But no, I mean, Correa just strikes me as a guy that he might try to pull another Minnesota Twins move where he joins another maybe borderline competitive team on a 1-year high AAV deal and move from there, or Correa's the replacement for Trey Turner. But Trey Turner's, I think, going to be in the $40 million range. I think Correa's going to be in maybe the $35 million range on a one or 2-year deal with a player option. And then Bogarts, I mean, it's who's to say? I could say 35 to 40 for him too, just because of what he brings offensively with a solid defensive glove. I mean, and then Dansby too. I mean, it's going to be crazy to see what teams are really going after what. And right now, no team has really said they're going after this shortstop. So it's kind of hard to really tell where any of them are going to go and what their market value is going to be inflated to.
I think if we had to rank them here, I would say Turner, probably for both of us, is our 1. As far as like who in a vacuum, who you would want on your team first, I would say Trey Turner's probably guy number 1. If we were to rank 2 through 4, what would be your ranking between Correa, Bogarts, and Swanson in order of like guys you would want long term?
Guys I would want long term, I would probably
say like
say
5
Turner
years or so.
Yeah, 5 years. I would say Turner, Bogarts, Swanson, Correa, in that order.
Okay. I would.
For me, I know the talent Correa is, but I just look at the injury history, and I just see the fact that he's kind of turning into an NBA type player where it's one and done deals, try to join whatever team's possible unless they're offering big AAV. And for me, I think Trey Turner's the complete package. Bogarts is great offensively and makes up for the not necessarily lack of defensive prowess, but he's not the defensive wizard that Dansby Swanson is, but his offense is better than Dansby's offense is, even though Dansby took up the offensive level. And what I think puts Dansby over Correa to me is I think whatever team he's going to be on, he's going to be the Derek Jeter type leader of that ball club. And I think, or for me, as an athlete myself, I mean that ranks higher than even somebody's ability to score runs and things like that, because I think that changes locker rooms and helps the team win.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for me, we might have the same list. I'd go Turner 1, obviously. I think just the skill gap between him and the next guy. I think the speed is really what separates him, because I think taking speed out of it, I think they're all fairly similar talents. Obviously, Correa's got a big arm. He's got maybe more power. Xander's maybe a more complete hitter than, and Dansby obviously is very good, but they're all very good. Those are all like super nitpicky things. But I think the range that Turner has defensively is very important at the shortstop position. Yeah, so he's my one for sure. I would say Bogarts ahead of Swanson, but barely.
Yeah.
I would say if you're getting one of those two, you're not upset if you're getting either one of them.
Oh
And
no,
then probably Correa 4.
Yeah, I mean, and when we're looking at this list too, I mean, yeah, you have to rank them 1 through 4, but I think it's really one. It's one Trey Turner, and then you've got 2A, 2B, 2C.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You want to take a stab at where these guys are going, man? I mean, we're going to be wrong because there's no even rumors about any of these guys at this point.
Yeah.
But
No,
where do we think Turner's landing, man?
Trey Turner. See, I feel like in the very end, the Dodgers will continue to roll out the pocketbook, and he'll be a Dodger.
Yeah.
But then again, I could see some other things happening where maybe he ends up a St. Louis Cardinal. I mean, I don't think the Cardinals will row all the dough out for him, knowing that they've already got a pretty solid payroll for that level of team.
Yeah.
But maybe he's a Yankee at the end of the day. I mean, I'm just trying to think of teams that would unload the Brinks trucks for him, because I think it's going to be that level of team to do it.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I think he returns to the Dodgers, but it's a bidding war between probably very many teams.
I would agree. I think he's going to be one of a couple of guys in this free agency class that all 30 teams will like try to at least get him in the room to have a conversation, because that is a franchise altering team. Dude, the Cardinals would be real interesting, because that would be the best infield maybe ever. Going around the whole.
Think about it, the Cardinals just kind of popped in my head, like, you know what, Trey Turner would actually look good in that uniform.
He
now,
would.
obviously, I'd be facing them in the playoffs, because it seems like the Braves always face the Cardinals at some point. But I mean, he'd look good in the uniform.
You know what? That would be interesting. I like the team that would have the pocketbooks to do that would be the Mets, I would think, with Cohen, but they have Lindor there.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's why we said the Mets.
I don't think they go that route. I feel like if you're signing Trey Turner, you're signing him probably to be a shortstop. Although I guess he could play center. I think he's capable of that. But
yeah,
like,
but
the
I don't think
assumption's
you're
got to
signing
be
him, or you're signing him for that money to push him to center field. I think you're putting all that money into him to say, hey, you're the shortstop of this team for the next 6-8 years.
all right. Where do we just take where's Swanson going, man? Is he going back to Atlanta? Is he on his way to fill the void in LA if they don't get Turner? Is he going somewhere
So
else?
what I will say is, I think Dansby ends up back in Atlanta, but I would not be surprised to see him as a Philadelphia Philly, just to break my heart, or a Los Angeles Angel.
I can see the Angels. I almost think the Angels for Correa makes sense. I think it would be a big bat. I think he would fit well in that market, kind of a West Coast market. I think way better than he would in Minneapolis. I think he's a big personality. Uh, to me, when I really sit down and think about it, Correa to the Angels makes a ton of sense. Because I gotta feel like he's going out west, and I don't imagine it'll be the Dodgers, but I guess it could be. It'll just depend on how
Well,
the rest of free agency goes.
Well, I just found an article that was just posted from The Athletic 3 minutes ago saying that the Angels are going heavy on Trey Turner. So
Okay.
you know what? I'm going to change my predictions. I'm going to say Trey Turner stays in LA, but with the Angels organization. And then
Okay.
let me jump down to Correa because this is where I was going to say Correa anyway. I think Correa would be the Trey Turner replacement with the Dodgers.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it's his time in Houston that just makes me want to hate him, so he goes to another team that I hate. But I don't know. Correa kind of screams Dodger to me. And then Dansby's
Yeah.
back in Atlanta or maybe Philadelphia. But then, you know what? Might as well make all my predictions in one. Dansby goes back to Atlanta and Bogarts is in Philly.
Do you think Boston retains anybody or signs anybody? Because if you're not bringing back Bogarts, that's an awfully big hole to kind of fill. Or are they just rocking with Jeter Downs and hoping for the best?
At this point, I think Boston's saying we need to go ahead and start a rebuild. Probably not as bad as the Chicago Cubs or even Atlanta Braves rebuilds of the last couple of years, but I
Yeah,
think they're in for a 95 loss season this year, and then maybe bouncing back to playoff contention the year after.
could see it. Could see it. I'll go Correa to the Angels because that I've squared that away in my head, and it kind of breaks my brain to think about Turner being there. Um, I'll say Dansby winds up in St. Louis. I think that would be a real fun pick.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like shortstop. Not that it's bad in St. Louis, but it's certainly not their strength. And
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think kind of shoring
didn't
that up.
they didn't they have Edmundo Sosa at the beginning of the year, and then traded him to Philadelphia?
Right, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's not a strength, and they're a playoff team. I think St. Louis is coming into this thinking we're one piece away,
Mm-hmm.
because they're a very good team all around. If you go around the diamond, and they've got some holes to replace. Yachty's retiring, although he's not the player he once was. That is a void to fill. And so, in a way, you could do that at the shortstop position with one of these guys. I would say Dansby probably is the guy I would go with there. Uh, I don't even have a clue where Xander's going to wind up. My gut says Xander may wind back up in Boston.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of felt the writing was on the wall for Xander. I know he loves Boston, but with that market value of just at $30 million, I know the Boston Red Sox can pay that. But with where they're at as an organization, I don't think it's the best decision for them. Or if I'm at least the GM, I'm not wanting to give Bogarts, who's 30 years old, an 8-year deal or a
Yeah,
6-year deal, even for that matter, at 30 plus million when you know the rest of your team is going to need to be rebuilt here very soon. And then Bogarts, let's just say he does sign the deal. I don't think he's going to be happy year 2 or year 3 into this deal when the team is middling at 500 because he's the only guy they've got on the team. When
yeah,
like your JD Martinez's and all that retire and all that.
yeah. I don't know. I just feel like to keep Devers happy, they need somebody else. They have Story, obviously, who would be the natural. You could slide over, or he stays at second and Downs plays short, or you flip those two.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. I just feel like they need one other guy to keep Devers kind of engaged.
Yeah, I think Devers at this point is out too. I mean, I think Boston's just at a situation where it's like, all right, we've tried. This isn't working. The Yankees are too good and too young at the moment. Even if they do lose Aaron Judge, I still think they're too good. And
Yeah,
they'll probably just wind up replacing him with a Michael Brantley or something and figure out who's going to play right field and throw Michael Brantley at DH and let it rock. And they'll still
yeah,
win the AL East. And then you look at Baltimore, they pushed for the playoffs this year when no one expected them to. And I think now it's an expectation now that they'll fight for a division. You look at what Tampa Bay continues to do. on their low budget. I think Boston's in a situation where they need to Miami Marlin it and just blow everything up and be the bottom feeder for a year or two.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see it. I think I think though if you look at it as I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think if Boston looks at it as like we're just paying this guy for 2 years because in year three, if things break right, we're competitive, and then we have a 33-year-old stud at shortstop, and you're probably thinking you're bringing Devers back. We can get a couple of arms out of the rotation. I don't think Sale's ever going to start 30 games in a year again. It just the way he throws and his build, that is just not a healthy arm, I think, for
Yeah.
the rest of his career. So maybe you get a couple of pitchers at some point. I don't know. I really think if they don't get Bogarts, I don't think they go after any of them. But because Bogarts was a Red Sox, I could see them making a run at trying to re-sign him at a minimum.
I mean, I think it's a no-brainer for the crowd that you have in Boston because what I'm saying should happen is not going to be going to make a Boston Red Sox fan happy by any stretch of the imagination. But you look at the window and what they're having. Yeah, if they just spend money, they could be one or two moves away. But I think long term, you look at Bogarts and where he's at, and I think he actually fits in more with Philadelphia's core in trying to stay competitive in the NL East than I think he even does with Boston.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. It'll be interesting to see how those break. The last thing on the shortstops, who's the first domino to fall? Who goes first, you think?
Um, I think it's going to be Bogarts. I think Bogarts is first one to go. And then after that, Correa might be quickly after. And then that leaves a bidding war for Dansby Swanson and Trey Turner because, like you said, I think everybody is going to want Trey Turner in the building, which I think extends his free agency. Now, if I'm going to put predictions on it, I think here in about a week or two when winter meeting starts, I think that's when the Xander deal falls. But now that we're saying this and putting this on YouTube, tomorrow Xander deal to like the Angels or something pop out.
Yeah. It'll just be on a whim. You'll be like, well, he's going to Oakland? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, he's the Elvis Andrus replacement, which I've also
Yeah.
seen as Braves replacement in Atlanta. I'm like, no.
Nah. I don't know. I feel like I think it's very possible that none of the shortstops go anywhere until they see what Turner gets.
True. I think
Because
that
they're not going to get that number, but I do think he'll set the market. If he gets hypothetically he gets 40 million a year, then Swanson's sitting there like, well, I can get somewhere between 37 and 35 then if he's getting 40, or if he blows it out of the water and Turner gets like 42 or 43. Suddenly Swanson's like, well, I can get 39 then if we're
true.
I don't know. I think it's possible everybody kind of
right.
waits on that. All right, let's talk about the Judge sweepstakes. Where is Aaron Judge going, man?
I think he's going to join Jock Peterson in San Francisco. I think he
Okay.
goes out to the Bay Area.
That's a real fun one. That's a real fun one. I don't think he hits 62 in San Francisco. I think you're absolutely right with that.
I think he hits maybe like 6 splash hits next year in San Francisco, but no, I don't think he hits anywhere close to 62 in San Fran.
Dude, 6 splash hits the other way would be. And those are monstrous shots the other way. But if there's anybody that could, it would be Judge, I guess. So
Yeah.
San Francisco's kind of an exciting pick. I might agree with you actually. I think he might go to San Francisco. I think it'll be real interesting because I think that's the guy. He's going to get probably the most, if I had to guess, of anybody. Because he's a pretty good right fielder. He's obviously a pretty good center fielder as well. Throw him almost anywhere in the outfield, and he's going to be serviceable. And then he's got the shelf life later you would figure to be a designated hitter.
Yep.
Now that's a full league-wide thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, in a look at this, and I look at this too, and Spot Rack has his AAV or market value at 30 or just under 38 million. I think that exceeds it by a lot because I think San Francisco has to pay a California tax too to bring him to California.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I just look through this list and I see the Evan Longorias and Brandon Belts of the world that are free agents as well. And San Francisco's clearing up. They're clearing up cash from a lot of old players, and you had Jock accept the qualifying offer of like 19 million, which obviously is I think more than what his market value would have been. But I think this team has money to spend, and they're going to try to make some splashes and set this team up for, instead of being your 37, 38-year-olds like Brandon Crawford still holding things down, I think you're going to try to get a little bit younger, but in a window where you can still go and compete and win a World Series every even number year.
He would get people in the seats. There's no doubt about that. Like, in a way that Posey did for a lot of his career when he was healthy, obviously. I feel like the Giants just haven't had a guy like that necessarily super recently. I mean, they had Chris Bryant for a stretch.
But putting people in the seats in San Francisco.
Yeah. I mean, you can say Logan Webb, like, absolutely, but that's once every 5 days. I think Judge is a guy that you can play him 155 games a year, assuming he's healthy, and as him playing designated hitter maybe 20, 30 games a year. It should keep him healthier. I kind of like that pick. Kind of like it. I really think he's going to wind up being a Met, because I don't think DeGrom is going to be a Met. So I think there's going to be that hole in Cohen's checkbook. He's going to be like, well, now I need to go spend $50 million. Let me sign Judge for like 4 years.
So then I assume that Brandon Nimmo is not a Met.
I would believe that would be true. Yeah. I don't think Nimmo comes back. I don't think Conforto comes back. I don't know what that does to the Mets outfield because I haven't really thought about it, but I don't see a way DeGrom comes back.
Yeah,
I just feel like he hasn't been healthy enough.
No, he hasn't been healthy enough, but I think he will be healthy enough from this point on. But knowing some things that I know about that certain pitcher, I think writing's on the wall that he's gone for more reasons than just the Mets. There's some things with some machine equipment that he made the team order that the team owned that he then purchased from the team whenever the season was over. And he took it from Citi Field to his house. So I think there's some writing on the wall with that.
Yeah, I would agree. You don't just like buy team equipment if you're like, yeah, I'm definitely coming back next year. I would probably agree with that. Real interesting spot to me, maybe not for Judge or any of the shortstops, is Seattle. You got to figure they sign somebody. I don't know that it's a big name like the 5 we've talked about at this point, or even DeGrom. But I got to figure they bring some people in because they got to feel like they're pretty close. They have Julio Rodriguez, obviously. The team is close, I would say, to being really good. They're okay. They're good now, but they got to feel like they're a middle of the order bat away from being very good.
Yeah. And so I'll go on a limb and say if I'm making Seattle Mariners predictions, something just feels right about, okay, so let's say Aaron Judge goes to San Francisco, and I know they've got some big pocketbooks to fill in because they can sign players in San Francisco. They've got money. But I do think Carlos Rodon is gone, and I think Rodon ends up in Seattle. Something about Rodon in Seattle feels weird, but yet weird enough that it feels true. And then I feel like they can go out and bring in a guy like Jose Abreu or even a JD Martinez and just have some veteran presence and a solid hitter there. That could be a middle order bat. That's your DH. Something about that feels right. You add that to the young core. And then is Mitch Haniger a free agent or is he not?
This has him as a free agent.
Okay.
The list I'm
Well, I
currently
mean,
looking
yeah,
at.
I'm seeing them here now too. And in reality, as I scroll down this list of free agents, I think Mitch Haniger comes back. And you know what? I want to scrap the older DHs like the Abreu's, and I think Trey Mancini ends up in Seattle.
Okay. Okay. I could see Mancini being in Seattle. That could be a real fun pairing, I think. Uh, can't play the field, but you wouldn't necessarily need to in Seattle, I feel like. Not
Yeah, I
more
mean,
than like 30 or 40 games a year.
how's Seattle's catching situation? Is it Cal Riley or is it somebody
I
else at the moment?
I really think they're gonna rock with Cal Raleigh, I think. I can't imagine. I'm looking at Wilson Contreras, and that just doesn't feel like a Seattle
Yeah, because I was
signing to
looking at the
me.
name and I'm like, okay, if they really need the catcher, Wilson Contreras would be bad. But no, I mean, I feel like they make some lower level money moves that are still obviously solid players. Like you bring back the
Yeah,
guys you've got, and then you, in a way, play money ball and bring in a guy like, bring in maybe a guy like Carlos Rodon to help that rotation and a Trey Mancini to be the middle of the order bat. Um,
yeah, yeah.
maybe even Benintendi.
I was gonna ask you about that one next. I think Benintendi is gonna get more money than I think most of baseball thinks. He's young. He's pretty good. He's got a good glove. He's got a good swing. Has proved he's been able to perform in big games out in Boston.
Yep.
He's just been stuck in Kansas City, so the world's kind of forgotten about him. But I think looking at the list of left fielders here, I think he's the best one still available at this point.
Yep. No, Spotrac has him at 17.39 million, but I think he could wind up in the 21 to 22 range.
I was going to
But
say
I
about
don't know
19 or
where
20.
Yeah.
I don't know where he winds up. He could be a real fun Seattle one. I, my gut says like Baltimore for some reason. I feel like to couple him with like Cedric Mullins.
Mm.
I think you have Austin Hayes out there. He would be in left, so Benintendi would maybe play right. I feel like Baltimore will try to do something.
But then again, you look at Benintendi's range and you look out in left field in Baltimore, they've got a couple extra yards there in left field to cover. So
That
maybe
is
you do
true.
keep Benintendi in left and move the other to right.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. He feels like a real fun Baltimore guy. It feels like Baltimore will sign somebody in the same way I feel like Seattle will try to sign somebody. Baltimore's got to
Yeah,
feel
and,
like
and you know what?
they're not close, but
I'm going to make one other catching prediction because I'm seeing his name here since we're talking about Seattle. Let's scrap the Wilson Contreras because obviously I don't think that's a Seattle type move. Gary Sanchez.
you know what? I could see Sanchez.
Gary Sanchez, maybe it's just his time with the Yankees and then Minnesota, and then the obvious next stop would be Seattle because a lot of players tend to make that trip because Minnesota's the Yankees of the Central, and Seattle's in a way has become the Yankees of the West, or at least in previous time.
Yeah.
Um, maybe just continue to move along to a different Yankees organization, but this time owned by a Japanese company like Sony over in Seattle.
Yeah. I could see Gary Sanchez there. I have no idea where Sanchez is going to land. He's one of many on this list, but I could see Sanchez not in Baltimore clearly because they have Rutschman.
Yeah.
That feels like he's not going to take over for Rutschman. I feel fairly confident saying that. Uh, I don't think he's coming to Texas. Maybe the Angels.
Good.
I feel like the Angels could use some catching help. But the Angels could just use some help in general. So
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I feel like the Angels just need to unload the Brinks trucks for all of these guys.
yeah,
Just
the
offer
Angels are
everybody.
looking at. Yeah, the Angels are looking. They're like, you know what? We need a shortstop. They got third base covered. They have Trout. They could use another outfielder. It's not named Joe Adele.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. All right, let's talk about some pitchers here as we kind of wind down, and we'll do some like final predictions. Let's talk about the big one first, though. Jacob deGrom. He's getting paid. Somebody's paying him a lot of money.
Yes, someone is paying him a lot of money, and I think whoever signs him will be very, very happy with what they're going to get out of him. Because I think from this point on, there might be a one or two more IL stints left in his career, but I don't think from this point onward, I don't think it's going to be anything major. But no, I mean, I look at teams who would unload Brinks trucks for him. I would love to see him in Atlanta just to steal him from the Mets. And I think he does want to be in Atlanta. But I don't think if the Braves aren't going to pay money to bring back Dansby Swanson, I don't think they would pay even more money to bring in DeGrom. So I think the logical, I think the logical reason or the logical location I think is the Texas Rangers. I think he's a Ranger.
I agree wholeheartedly. I try to think about it objectively, but then it's like you just look. There's too many signs on the wall, I think, for me to not go the Rangers, especially as a Rangers fan. But they've talked about they want a middle of the order bat this year, and they want a big arm. You got to figure the biggest arm is DeGrom, uh, and so that just seems like if they don't get him, they're going to make a run at him for sure. But
Yeah, I mean, and then I keep throwing this team out there, even though they may not really have the money that we say they do. But if they're going after Trey Turner heavily, we might as well go after DeGrom too and have a Otani DeGrom rotation of the Angels. But again, I don't see DeGrom an Angel. I think the only team I think he lands up with is Texas. I think it's a foregone conclusion that he's gone from New York, unless it's the Yankees. But I still don't think he wants to be in the city of New York anymore. So either Atlanta ups the bidding for saying, hey, either we're just going to rock with Vaughn Grissom, which at shortstop, which I think is a unfortunate probability, and lose Dansby and spend that on a DeGrom or a Verlander, or even a Carlos Rodon. But at the end of the day, I think DeGrom is a Ranger because there's no one else that's going to pay $50 million a year. But what did the Rangers do last year? They gave $500 million to two little infielders that could be the future of that team. I mean, so I might as well add another $50 million a year AAV guy, and add DeGrom, and now you have your ace of the staff for the next 6 years, 5 years.
Yeah, I do wonder how many years he's going to get because he is 35. I feel like five. I feel like whatever team gets him, Rangers or not, is probably going to have to give him that fifth year. I would feel good about doing that as a Rangers fan because even if that fifth year is not as great, you're still looking at probably a pretty good 3 or 4 starter. And maybe you're overpaying for him at that point, but you got an ace for 2 or 3 years in that window, and then at that point you're in Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker territory, Cole territory in the rotation, and he wouldn't need to be the ace necessarily. Uh, and the dream obviously for DeGrom would be to be as effective as Verlander is. I don't know that that's achievable because I just think Verlander's an alien apparently based on what he's just done. But that would be the dream for whoever signs him, and probably for DeGrom as well.
Yeah, with the DeGrom contract, I feel like a team like Texas could get very creative with the deal, and I could see him getting a 5-year deal with an opt-out after 3, like a player opt-out after 3, and then maybe another player option into year 4 to go to year 5, where, you're probably screwed into paying him big money in years 4 and 5 if he has fallen off, because obviously you'd probably accept the $50 million a year if he's a 440 ERA pitcher at age 39. But the thing is with DeGrom, the fact he came back from his rehab throwing 102, and to my knowledge, the velocity didn't fall towards the end of the year after he really came back and got in the rotation. And he's throwing harder, easier. and less stress on the arm now. So I could see him very well being a Verlander. Do I think he throws 102 till he's 39? No, but I think he's a still mid to upper 90s guy,
Yeah.
even in Texas. And I think for DeGrom, he can still locate. So I think that's all you need, and he could easily be the 1 or 2 in Texas for the next 5 years.
Yeah. I would feel if all the Rangers did this offseason was get DeGrom and then like anybody to play left field, that that would be a win for me. Anybody not named Cole Calhoun. I know you're listening, Rangers management, because every time I say anybody, you're like, oh, Cole Calhoun. Like, no, stop it.
Well, you know what? I've got one more prediction. How about the Rangers go get Benintendi and DeGrom?
I just thought about it. Maybe I'd be down. I'd be down. Benintendi could be like a Blue Jay, dude.
Yeah.
They just offloaded Teoscar, and they need left-handed bats. I mean, we talked about that in the
It was an
trade
all
video.
right-handed at bat lineup during the wild card game.
I don't know, man. Benintendi to the Blue Jays could make some sense. Let's talk about Verlander. Where do we think he's going, and for how long? Because he's turning 40.
Well, Verlander wants a 3-year deal from everything that I've seen. And I think he's shown no signs of slowing down. The fact we talked about it in the Cy Young portion. Like he came back from a Tommy John surgery to unanimously win the Cy Young. And Verlander, I think, is in a situation where he could be Nolan Ryan-esque and pitch into his mid-40s. And so, yeah, I think a team only gives him a 3-year deal at max. But I think Verlander's not accepting anything less than a 3-year deal. I think he does wind up in Houston, even though the Astros have kind of made some weird moves since winning the World Series in firing their GM. I think whoever's stepping in for them, it's a no-brainer. Like, you have to bring back Verlander. I think the Michael Brantley writing's on the wall. And who else? Houston. I really don't remember who Houston's really got as free agents other than Will Smith now, who I think I would love to come back to Atlanta, make it a 3-peat in rings. But no, I think if you're the Houston Astros, you have made moves like getting rid of Correa and trusting youth. But I'm not sure what they've really got down there from a pitching standpoint. And can these other guys like Valdez and whoever and all the other guys in their rotation, can they really step up for losing a Verlander? I think you can't lose Verlander. So back to Houston, or maybe he's a Yankee with the money given up from losing Aaron Judge to San Francisco.
Yeah, I could see that. I'll probably agree with that. I think Verlander back to Houston. If you're an Astro, I think it needs to happen. I think he's the heart and soul of that rotation, especially now. Although I do think what some of the other guys did in the postseason helps that. And Verlander did not perform super well in the postseason, but throughout the regular season, for sure, he was their guy. Clearly, as he's just won a unanimous Cy Young. That doesn't just happen unless you're the guy on the mound, and he was. So that is an awfully big hole to ask like Valdez to step into, or like your Urquidy, if you're looking to get more out of him.
Yeah,
I think it is a must to bring him back.
Yeah, it's a must. And if you lose Verlander to an Angels or Yankees, I think Braves country is delusional thinking Verlander is going to come to Atlanta. If I will say from a Braves fan perspective, if we're getting a starting pitcher, it's DeGrom or nobody else.
Yeah.
But no, I think Houston's delusional if they think getting rid of Verlander is going to help them. I don't see what pitcher in their organization is going to step up and fill that void. But if you lose him to a Los Angeles, whether it's the Dodgers, the Angels, or the Yankees, you have to bring in either a DeGrom or a Rodon or a Noah Syndergaard. Like, There's no ifs, ands, or buts there. If you lose
Yeah.
Verlander, but I think Verlander's made perfectly for this Houston Astros team. Like you said, he's the heart and soul of this rotation. Similar to my thoughts on Dansby Swanson, why lose the heart and soul of your team just because you don't want to pay him money?
Yeah. I would agree wholeheartedly with that. Let's group in three of the other starters that kind of catch my eye looking at this list. We're not going to talk about all 75 of these guys clearly, as we're an hour in. Uh, we'll go Carlos Rodon, and then I'm going to group in with Rodon. Obviously, not at the same level, but so two other guys that I feel like are worth talking about on the starting pitcher list are going to be Eovaldi, who's an interesting arm. Not necessarily the best, but he could bring some value to a team. And then we'll go Chris Bassett, who turned down a qualifying offer from the Mets as well. I guess we'll start with Rodon. He's the biggest of the three. I'd feel pretty good
Okay.
saying.
I'm going to stay with my prediction when we were talking about the Mariners and think Rodon's a Mariner at
Okay.
the end of it. I mean, something about him screams Toronto Blue Jays too. But I still think Seattle wants to make a splash, and he fits better with this window that they have because he is one of the younger elite pitchers out on the market. So I think Rodon's in Seattle.
I will I will stick with a general thing I've said, and I'll go with Rodon's going to Baltimore. I think they look to add a top of the rotation arm. Who will be around as their window opens and then into probably the middle of it, while some of their younger guys like DL Hall start to raise up. I don't know that that's what's going to happen, but besides the two teams you've said, I think that makes the most sense. I could also see him being a Brave. I know you're like DeGrom or no one, but I don't know. I feel like if they're like, man, we want to add a pitcher, Rodon's not a bad one by any means. He's not
Yeah.
DeGrom, but
And that's the thing too. Not to speak very long on it. I mean, I think if it's Degrom, like obviously it's Degrom,
yeah,
but Rodon would probably be the only other guy I would accept if you're going out and signing an arm if you're Atlanta, because he does fit in the rotation. I think he would get you. I mean, he's another lefty in the rotation with Freed, and gets you out of the competition with Ian Anderson, Mike Soroka coming back from injury. But I think Atlanta at this point has 3 or 4 guys fighting for that 5th spot role, and could very easily have a 6-man rotation if Ian Anderson bounces back. And Soroka is what I think he will be coming back from 2 years off of injury. So I
yeah.
don't think Atlanta wants to sit back and block those guys from being what they are. And I do hope that a guy like Kyle Muller, who is going to be in the running to fight for that, is traded with like a Marcell Ozuna to clear cap. But
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, who knows with that?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It'll be interesting. My devil's advocate for that, just quickly, is I would rather have 6 good starters and then everybody's just a hint fresher going into a September run than I would 5 starters and you're hoping Soroka is good. Not saying he's going to be bad, but there is certainly some uncertainty after 2 years of not playing just due to various stuff.
Oh, of
Would be my
course.
only
No, yeah, and
reservation
if you
about
bring
that.
back or if you bring in Rodon and then you still have Soroka and Ian Anderson, that's 7 major league guys that you really could trust, even though Ian had a very shaky season. I mean, the fact that he was still 10-6 with a 5-something ERA uh, says
Yeah.
something. I mean, either Atlanta bailed him out a lot, which was true, but
I think
you
that's
still
what
don't.
it says.
Yeah, I mean, you still go 10-6 with a 5-something ERA. You're at least making some pitches.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The lineup was helping him a lot though, if that's the ERA he was rocking. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, pitchers need help.
Yep.
I mean, we saw DeGrom go below 500 like 2 or 3 years ago with the Mets with like a sub 2 ERA. So someone in the MLB has got to balance that out. This year was Ian Anderson. So let's talk about Bassett next. I To me, Bassett is going to Seattle. That just makes too much
Okay.
sense to me. I think it feels a whole lot Like he'll be the top of a rotation guy, but not in a big market town. And I think Seattle kind of fits that bill. I think he's certainly good enough to. He'll go back to that role he had in Oakland. But I think
Okay.
good to be like a 3 somewhere like he was last year.
Yeah, I mean, now that you say that, I could see Bassett being in Seattle. But I think with the Mets losing DeGrom, I think you have to do what you can to bring him back, even if that's paying Bassett more. I mean, you offered him the qualifying offer. He obviously declined it. But I think at this point, if you want to still be competitive in this very competitive National League East, where I think the Philadelphia Phillies will go out and try to make moves to really show that they weren't a fluke. I don't know. I think you have to bring back Bassett because if you lose DeGrom and Bassett out of that rotation, that's a tough loss for New York. And
Yeah.
pitching, I mean, offense was. I mean, they played small ball, but very very well this year, the New York Mets. But
Yeah.
I think pitching's what held everything together. But you can't just only have Scherzer. So I think you bring him back. And then if you want to talk about the other pitchers of like Eovaldi or Syndergaard, I think Syndergaard losing Ranger Suarez could end up back in Philadelphia. But Eovaldi also feels like a Philly guy.
Yeah. I see no world while I'm thinking about it that Syndergaard winds up back with the Mets. It just feels like that ship has sailed. And I also can't imagine, unless he gets blown out of the water, he's going to be in the NL East because it feels like he's. Everything I've read says he just doesn't want to face the Mets, and so if you sign with any of the other 4 teams, being the Braves, the Phillies, obviously the Marlins and the Nationals, you're going to have to play the Mets quite a bit. That was the appeal to him originally going to the Angels all those years ago. At this point,
That is true.
uh, So I Philly would have to blow him out of the water with an offer, I think, for him to go back. But it's not impossible if that happens. I just think for Philly to bring him back, they'll probably overpay for Syndergaard.
Yeah.
Where do you think Syndergaard's going?
I'm not sure. I look at what the Phillies lost, and I still say Philadelphia. But knowing that he doesn't want to face NL East hitters, I don't know. Maybe a return to LA is on the horizon, but again, he didn't pitch very well in LA.
Yeah,
Syndergaard's just this kind of weird conundrum of a player that's like, all right, you suck some places and then you're amazing in other places. So what Thor powers do you have and where do you have them? So I could see him wind up in a Seattle, maybe.
yeah,
I could maybe even see him with like the Toronto Blue Jays or the Baltimore Orioles. I
yeah.
mean, well, Eovaldi too. I think Eovaldi could be Baltimore. Now I
I could
think
see
about it as
Eovaldi in
well.
Baltimore.
So, I mean, he knows those American League East hitters very well. But no, I mean, I think the Syndergaards and Eovaldis of the world are going to have to wait for the major dominoes to fall to figure out who's really interested in them.
Yeah,
I think Eovaldi's kind of like on the Charlie Morton type deal Atlanta's got him on, where it's 1 year, $20 million every year if you just want to come back or you perform and want to come back with whatever team signs him. But
yeah,
it's going to be a playoff contender for both of those guys. It's going to be a playoff contender that wants to upgrade their rotation. And Syndergaard, I feel, is younger than he really is at 30.2 years old. He
yeah.
feels to me like he's 27, 28. So I can't get Baltimore out of my head now when I think Syndergaard.
I'll give you a weird one for Syndergaard. I'll go Detroit. I
Huh.
feel like Detroit, they signed Baez a couple of years ago. With Casey Mize coming up, uh, they're like, man, we just need anybody on the mound. So I could see Syndergaard being that guy, just to have major league talent out there. And then if you sign him, you're like, well, he's here for 5 years. Maybe our window opens up in the next 2 or 3. because I do feel like they're trending in the right direction generally. It is slower than maybe Detroit fans would like, but with Hinch and Baez and all of them out there, I think
Yeah, well,
maybe.
one other pitcher I'm seeing that is a free agent that I forgot was Sean Manaea. Yeah, Sean Manaea might be a Baltimore Orioles type move. I feel like
Yeah,
he pitched better in Oakland than obviously did in San Diego. I think San Diego is going to want to move on from him, and maybe he's got something to prove in a smaller market. Not saying Baltimore's a very small market, but just
yeah,
knowing how the Orioles are as an organization, it's much smaller than New York.
sure.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of pitching options, even your Zach Greinke's of the world and Madison Bumgarner's that are free agents. So I think the B tier of these free agents are really going to need to wait to see what the big guys get and what dominoes do fall there before any of these guys start going.
Yeah, it'll be real interesting. I think Mania to again Seattle. If Seattle doesn't land Bassett, I think they land somebody. Maybe not at Bassett's level, but at Manaya's level certainly. And I think Manaya out there could make some sense. Toronto, like you said, could also make some sense. Yeah, those are the big guys in my estimation. Are we missing any starters?
When I look through this list, I mean, there are a couple starters like the Taiwan Walkers and Andrew Heaney, um, but all these guys are like your Zach Greinke's. They're kind of the C plus to B minus tier
Yeah.
that I think are solid additions for a team, but not much where you need to talk about them in depth. I mean, Mike Clevenger.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Tyone is here. Man, what a career he could have had if he just stayed healthy, I feel like.
Oh yeah.
Drew Drew Smiley's here. Drew Smiley's about to be the ace of Oakland. That's my prediction for him.
I'll go on record and say it's going to be Chad Cool.
Okay. You know what? I'm a big Chad Cool guy. I think I follow him on Instagram. I follow a bunch of the Pirates pitchers on Instagram, I think. I have Trevor Williams on there. Cool is definitely one of them. Okay, so is there any bats we haven't talked about that we feel like we should?
Gene Segura is a free agent with Philadelphia. Um, I mean, I think Will Myers continues to go underrated as a solid hitter for any organization, and your Josh Bells of the world. But just for the memes, where does Joey Gallo go?
Not even as a joke. Texas.
I was going to say the same thing. I think he's back in Texas.
It's either Texas or it's going to be a weird one like Kansas City or something. I feel like he could dominate in a small market. I just think you get it's awfully tough as a Dodgers fan or as a Yankees fan to watch a guy hit like 200 and feel great about it when you're
Yeah.
all in on winning. You're like, man, that is an out 4 out of 5 times. If you're in Kansas City, you're like, oh man, like that is, the power is maybe worth a flyer. I feel like he could come back to Texas. I don't know that he will. I kind of hope he does. But as a fan, maybe not as like a baseball personnel person, but as a fan, it'd be cool to have him back.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has turned around a lot of his issues from his time in Texas or his other
Yeah,
stops with the Yankees, and I think he got things turned around in L.A. So I think there's a situation where a return to Texas allows him to be the star of that team again. Yeah, I mean Corey Seager is Corey Seager, and yeah, I'm not in Texas as much to see every single Ranger game on TV.
yeah,
But I still have this feeling that Simeon is someone who you're paying very highly and that fans like, but no one's really behind him saying he's the star of our team. Seager
right.
was signed to be the leader of, or not necessarily. Well, Simeon was signed to be the leader of the team. Seager was signed to be the star of the team. But I think Joey Gallo coming back would be the true star of that team, if not, obviously, the Jacob deGroms.
Yeah.
But I'll rattle off three more names that I just saw. We kind of talked about Wilson Contreras, but we never really talked about him. Wilson Contreras.
Yeah. Who needs a catcher? It could be any number of teams. Like I could see him if you were like, these 16 teams, or the guy, like he winds up in anywhere but Baltimore, basically. I could see it. I think the Yankees. I think the Yankees would be a real interesting one. I know Trevino just won a Gold Glove, but the bat for Trevino is awfully tough. As a guy that watched him as a Ranger, it does not play as well as you would think that it would,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And his ability behind the plate obviously is very good, just winning a Gold Glove. But I would feel like the offense from Trevino or from Contreras would be worth the defensive drop off, and I don't even think it'd be that big of a defensive drop off.
Yeah. I'm going to give two options here. I'm going to say, well, one, if you're any Cubs fan watching this deep into the episode, don't block me on all social media for saying this. But I think he goes to their, not crosstown rival, but I think he goes to their rival in St. Louis or Houston.
I could see both of those. St. Louis makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I look at knowing the Contreras brothers the way that they are. I feel like he would take on a villain role by going to St. Louis, and he would welcome it. But I also feel like Houston could unload some money if they don't bring back a Verlander, and say, hey, we need to upgrade our offense since our pitching's not going to be as good. And let's go upgrade from a very defensive catcher to a very offensive catcher.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, but the two other names that I had were both outfielders, and they both scream small market but good player vibes to me. Kevin Kiermaier and Jurickson Profar.
You know what? Kiermaier feels like a big Oakland guy.
Okay. I was going to say Cleveland.
I can see Cleveland. I think Cleveland's at a point where they're like, after having watched that playoff series against Seattle where they scored like 2 runs in like 45 innings of baseball or whatever it was, I don't think they're like, the bat that fixes this is Kevin Kiermaier. I think if they add somebody, it'll be with an offensive thought. Profar at Cleveland could make some sense potentially.
Yeah. For me, I think Profar, with his versatility and being a utility guy, could end up in Philadelphia.
Have we talked about Segura?
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of did. I'd mentioned that he was a free agent. I mean, the Josh Bells of the world, too. Maybe even A.J. Pollock.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, when I look at Josh Bell, I think he would return to San Diego. When I look at Gene Segura, I don't know. Something about him. I mean, the fact that he never missed a curveball outside the zone, or never swung and missed a curveball outside of the zone the entire season, including playoffs. I think Philadelphia brings him back. But if he leaves Philadelphia, maybe he goes to a team like the White Sox. Maybe the White Sox have a second baseman that I'm not thinking about at the moment, but feels like the White Sox could need a second baseman. Just kind of like a sneaky pick of a team that could compete if they have one or two pieces.
Yeah, I really think Segura is going to wind up back in Philly, especially after having won or gotten to the World Series.
Yeah.
Because again, that would be a pretty big bat to replace, especially in the middle infield. If you're not going to bring in a Swanson or Bogarts or Correa or Turner, That's a pretty big hole, I feel like, because he's very solid all around. And to just lose that, and you do have Bryson Stott, but somebody's got to play short. I feel like you got to
Well,
bring
see,
it back if you're Philly.
yeah, I think it's the logical option to bring Segura back, but something tells me that Philadelphia is going to try to go out and steal a Dansby Swanson or try to bring in big time guys to really compete for a division title, and they may lose out on their own guys trying to focus on bringing in the big guys. And that's where, although I would hate it because I really like this player and I don't want to root against him, but I could see an Adam Frazier leaving Seattle and being a replacement for a Segura in like a Philadelphia or something like that.
I could see that. I could see that. Well, recording that's 90 minutes. So watching that, it's going to be. I don't know how much I'm going to have to cut, actually. There wasn't that much downtime. But maybe 80 minutes if I
Yeah,
had to guess, just off the top
you
of my
could,
head. That flowed pretty
you
well.
could you could definitely cut down a little bit, but no, I mean there's still some other guys in here that are questionable. Like they were better players at one point. I mean, you got your Christian Vasquez's,
Yeah, your
Omar
Jackie
Narvaez,
Bradley Jr.'s here.
yeah, Jackie Bradley Jr. I mean, this list is a lot deeper than I even thought. Like Mike Zunino's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
I think
800
obviously,
starting pitchers. You know what? We didn't
yeah,
talk about a single reliever. Well, because there is none. Never mind.
we did. I mean, the only reliever we really talk about is um,
There's really
Nate,
none that are.
because Kenley Jansen. Nah, I'm over Kenley. Craig Kimbrell,
There's none
Aroldis
to
Chapman.
move the needle that are
Yeah,
left. Like Diaz was the one, but yeah, I don't know. If
no.
you've made it,
When Will Smith is your fourth best reliever on the market, it's not a very good reliever.
yeah, that is just tough. On this list, I have 37-year-old Chris Martin as one, two, three, four, the like sixth reliever here. So I don't want to talk about Chris Martin that much.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, if you made it to this part of the video, thank you, Justin. Give him a word to comment, and we'll pin the comment.
If you're still listening to this point in the video, comment reliever, since we did not talk about relievers in this episode.
All right. Well, know you're a real one if you comment the word reliever. But yeah, that's gonna do it. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll have to do it again. That flowed pretty well. It was pretty fun.
It was.
Uh,
Make
have
sure
to
you
talk
guys
about
go
some football stuff
follow
at
me.
some point.
Yep.
I just destroyed my pen. We'll see y'all in the next one.